As a general rule, we tried to stick to the art anytime we could. There were things here and there that sometimes made that impossible if we were going to tell a story that wouldn't take the viewer out of the picture.
You can have a 2D art going from side to side, up and down, but if somebody turns ahead or turns around, I mean, we can't do that. The 2D plane just breaks, so the illusion breaks.
Simple things like a head turn or someone walking from point A to point B within a frame became nearly impossible working with the 2D art. So we would have to create a 3D character that could either turn his head or move across the frame.
Because you stopped.
So, the hour arrives.
3D is a whole different beast. Everything is built from scratch. We have models that are built. And there's also just trying to integrate our 3D with the 2D. There's a certain grain, there's a certain color palette to what Esau did, and it was tricky trying to come up with a different combination of things that made our 3D not stick out too bad from the art. It's not seamless, but it's as close as we were able to find for this project.
And sometimes there were backgrounds that, you know, we had to sort of create or recreate or piece together based on other art.
Yeah, it's stuff in a comic book they do, like an artist will paint in a set, and then in the other panels after that doesn't, because it's already implied that that's where the action is taking place. And we felt, as we're trying to take this towards a more cinematic, filmic look, that we couldn't just hop out of our sets like that. So we've had to work to try to recreate our sets, and from opposite angles. So sometimes we were able to find other panels in the comic book to just reuse. Sometimes we had to project that art onto a 3D set and rotate it around and repaint in. But basically what we're trying to do is to keep the audience from looking at it and say, whoa, what just happened?
Your viewer would sort of lose all sense of perspective and where they were in three-dimensional space. So that was a pretty big job for the compositors and the other artists to find those elements and sort of recreate be it Loki's bedroom or whatever it was.
But it's a constant process. We found out things in issue 4 of making it look better that we hadn't figured out in 2 or 3. So Mark took on more the pre-production side and defining what the initial step from the comic book page to an animated form of storytelling.
What that boiled down to is I would get the voiceover that would be sent to us from James Snyder at Edge Studio in New York, who handled all of the voice casting and recording.
Of filth, what cruelty to bring up a son in such a manner.
And then I would take that and then take the already scanned in art panels and everything. Time every shot out so that I have basically a rough cut, and we knew how many shots we were going to have and then how long each shot was going to be.
And then we would get together and decide on what worked, what didn't work, and how from there to move on.
There's a lot of logistics involved. Just because of timeline, we may not have time to do this character as 3D versus, something else. So it becomes a big juggling act.
And then I would go back in and handle more of the production side, who was working on what, and from there making sure that every step of the process was in line with the vision that Mark and I had at the beginning, so that once it had been through painting, rigging, animating, and then the final compositing, making sure that that was exactly what we had envisioned at the beginning.
And then once you get closer to the end, part of my job too was sit down and then look at it as a finished piece and then edit it and see where we needed to trim some fat. Are the sequences working the way we wanted them to work? After the picture for each episode was locked, we would send it back to Edge Studio for mixing and sound design. And then Mats Plessner at Underground Music did such an amazing job scoring all 4 of these episodes.
We're all constantly trying to make things work. I mean, this way of taking a comic book to a different medium is tough. We're still experimenting and figuring it out. And there were times where we work on a shot and make it all through the process, and we look at it and think it's just not quite working.
And so trying to figure out how to juggle things like that in the amount of time without having to recreate everything.
So that was frustrating, but there were times when we thought that was going to work and we made it through, and then the end result was great.
Sometimes the most frustrating moments became the most gratifying.
I think we told a story that's not a lot of big explosions and not a lot of action, and it's really a very human sort of little indie film feel to the whole thing.
Loki as a person, as a character, you know, what are the things he's going through, and how do we make that relatable to the audience?
May be driven to extremes, but despite ancestry, destiny, and the weight of the cosmos, he retains yet his power to say no.
Thor will bear you no goodwill for sparing him.
Perhaps not.
I think anybody who has a family can relate to the story. I think a lot of this is about Loki's feelings having grown up, feelings being an outsider, feelings that there was always a favorite brother. You know, it really does breathe some life into the character. He's not just the evil guy in this, but he's a guy who has a reason for his actions. And as he discovers through the course of the comic, a lot of the feelings he had as a child really do have some place in reality. There really is something behind a lot of the things he believed, and in some cases not, as he goes through and learns more throughout the story.